everything we do or say at every moment is because of needs, is because we have human needs, including violent things, including things that are destructive, is underneath we're trying to meet needs. And that's the part of the consciousness. So I'm giving you the bigger picture, but in the moment that looks like, okay, there might be some reasons why this person acted that way.
Welcome. I'm here with nonviolent communication trainer Myriam Verzat. Now, nonviolent communication, one of my goals in life is to continue to become a master of communication in all its forms. Such a powerful thing to interact with other people in the world. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is nonviolent communication?
So nonviolent communication is a set of process and tools and skills to communicate with others in a respectful way, but also in a way that cares for everybody's needs. It's also a form of consciousness, a form of like living compassion in some ways with people around us. Behind it, one key intention is to support us to stay connected through conflict, to help us like move, engage in conflict, even dare to engage in conflict in a way that maybe we could grow from it. Maybe we could learn from it. Maybe at the end on the other side, we could be even more connected. And this approach to communication has been created by a man called Marshall Rosenberg, who comes from the States, and he's developed this approach in the 1960s. And he was greatly influenced from a lot of other people. Like he didn't like invented the whole thing. He was influenced by Gandhi and Martin Luther King around nonviolence approaches. And one of his, he's a psychologist, and one of his main mentor was Carl Rogers. And, but really for me, the genius in what he did is like a form of clarifying and simplifying through a model, the nonviolent communication model, that makes it kind of like easier to remember, but also very clear. So there's 4 steps in this model that are observations, feelings, needs, and requests. And those 4 elements can support us in having, forms of communication that allow us to navigate conflict with more ease. So, but really, like, there's those 4 steps, and I often talk about them like the 4 magical steps, but ultimately there's so much depth in it. And there's a set of like principles and ideas that underlie it that are more like in the realm of like intention. Like, what intentions do I have when I enter into this conversation? Like, and can I connect to an intention of understanding and of connecting with the other person? So for me, when I introduce nonviolent communication to people, it's often at the core of it is like, can I be honest with myself about what my intention is here? For example, like, is my intention to be right? Is my intention to get things my way? Is my intention to just express anything I have to say, and hope for the best? So
Yeah, I see like it, right in the words nonviolent communication, it seems like kind of a pushback or the flip side of violent communication, which is something that we've probably all experienced. I know I've been on the giving end of it as well. And in conflict, you're talking about conflict, it's so easy to cycle into violence when one person's feeling hurt or both people are feeling hurt, and then somebody throws an insult, and then like that's the start, bing bang boom, and hopefully it doesn't get into physical violence. But as a society, I think we're becoming more and more aware that some communication is violent as well and should be avoided. So nonviolent communication, can you kind of like run us through you mentioned the 4 magical steps? Like, what would it look like if we were in conflict?
Well, and I want to start there is like there before even I try to change the way that I'm going to speak. I want to try to change the way that I approach my connection with this person. And so the first step of nonviolent communication is the self-empathy process, which is like, okay, what's happening for me here? What am I feeling in this situation?
Self-empathy.
Yeah, self-empathy. So it's a form of self-connection that is about understanding myself, but with this compassion and this with this care for myself. Like, I'm going through something hard here. I have a lot of emotions. What's going on? And can I take responsibility for those emotions and acknowledge it? Like, I'm feeling super frustrated right now. Okay, that's my reaction. That's how I feel. And distinguish that from all the projection of they did something wrong. This is so bad. And I was like, okay, I am feeling frustrated. What need of mine is not met here? And kind of clarify that for myself. And so that comes before I even open my mouth, before I like engage with a person. There's that whole internal process of like taking responsibility, clarifying what just happened, what am I feeling, why am I feeling that way, what are the motivations inside of me, what are the values, the things that I value.
So I'm
And
hearing that self-awareness is the first
yeah,
step in
yeah,
recognizing that I have this feeling.
yeah,
I'm feeling angry because all these dishes are in the sink.
yeah,
But it's identifying the feeling in me, not
yeah,
just saying these dishes in the sink are disgusting.
yeah. Yeah, and why is that? Because what do I value? I really value like order and beauty in my space. And why? Because it allows me to feel settled, to feel grounded, to feel peace inside of me when it's clean. I can think clearly, I can like my mind is even more organized when I have that. And that's mine. Like that's not everybody's not designed that way, but that's how is what I need. And can I take that responsibility before I engage, even in the conflict with the other person?
Okay,
So
so
that's
this
step
self,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And then
what
the
comes
step
next?
two, that it's still inside of the self connection, is can I become curious of why would be the reasons why the other person acted that way? So it's a little bit of that, okay, if I assumed, and I often say that, it's like if I assume that this person is not acting that way just to piss me off,
And that's such a key assumption.
it's a key assumption. We often go there. Like it seems like the entire world is against us. Is constantly plotting to how to trigger us and how to annoy us. And the reality is not. Just people are trying to meet their needs, and
Mhm.
they're acting in the world in the way that sometimes doesn't work for us. But they're trying
Okay,
to meet their
so
needs.
assuming this person wasn't intending to hurt me
Yeah,
by leaving these dirty dishes, like
exactly.
maybe they were busy. They had to rush off.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they were like there's something else really more urgent in the moment. Maybe that's a reality that's not as important and they're prioritizing other things today, for example. Or they, in general, are prioritizing other things in their life than cleanliness or the degree of cleanliness that I'm enjoying. Um, and really that step is connected to the idea and cultivating that in my being that everybody, including myself, speaks or acts or move into the world, everything we do or say at every moment is because of needs, is because we have human needs, including violent things, including things that are destructive, is underneath we're trying to meet needs. And
Okay,
that's the
so
part
then,
of the consciousness. So I'm giving you the bigger picture, but in the moment that looks like, okay, there might be some reasons why this person acted that way.
so step one is tuning into my feeling and
Yeah,
my needs.
yeah,
Step two is tuning into the other person,
yeah. Is activating my curiosity. Yeah. And that's all before
curiosity.
I even open my mouth again.
Mm. Okay, that's so interesting. Communication, I immediately think of what we say with our mouth.
Yeah,
But you're saying there's important steps before we even talk of using our mind, tuning into our emotions, tuning
yeah,
into other people's consciousness as best we can,
yeah.
which is a challenge for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And that's the one of the key practice of nonviolent communication is empathy, is that capacity to extend towards the other. Extend that curiosity of like, what would it be like to be you right now? Why would
Hmm.
you act that way? And I think we all have an innate capacity to do that, but we can significantly grow that capacity. And I've seen it in myself in my journey, like the capacity to tune into other people's experiences, to be curious, but also to reflect what I'm hearing they might be going through.
Mhm. Now,
Can
is that the
yeah.
same as empathy, or is that slightly different? Because
Yeah. So there's two things. There's like internal empathy, what I would call, or like the experience of that curiosity, which means like I don't even have to open my mouth. I can just internally start making guesses of why the person is acting that way. So you take a child, for example, you see a child who's losing it and just starts destroying everything, for example. Well, of course, might have some initial reactions inside of you, and you can connect to like a need for safety, for example, for peace right now, for respect, maybe, right? And then there's that step of like, okay, this child is not just acting that way just to piss me off. This child is reacting in this explosive way because there's needs that are not met. And even without talking, I can start activating this like, why could this child be reacting that way?
okay, so talking about empathy and curiosity, I'm curious to understand more about empathy in general and curiosity as well. So, my understanding of empathy is that it is feeling the feelings of other people. And then when I think about curiosity, it's more in my head and more in like
Mhm.
an understanding other people
Mhm.
without necessarily feeling it, or maybe it can also have empathy included within it.
Mhm.
What's your take?
Well, the way I approach it is that empathy starts with curiosity. It starts with this like wanting in some ways or opening myself up to another person's experience that is different from mine. And then empathy itself, for me, is a form of a kind of a space that we create in between two people, um, where that is grounded in a certain quality of presence and of openness to the other person's experience. And the intention is both to understand, but for me, it's also to allow the person in front of me to understand themselves better. So it's both for me to understand them, but if it's also to offer a space for this person to understand their own feelings and needs better.
Mm.
And
And
so I
so,
put myself, yeah,
like the act of reflecting something back to somebody, what they're feeling or what they're saying, can be an instance of that, an opportunity for them to know themselves more.
yeah, exactly. So it can be through words and it can be that through that reflection process, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, for me, like empathy um, can start just in silence with this quality of presence and warmth and that curiosity and that what is going on for you. I would love to hear and I would love to support you understanding that better for yourself as well.
Mm.
So it's kind of, I like the metaphor of like walking alongside somebody. I'm not trying to lead them anywhere. I'm not trying to push them in any kind of direction. I'm just kind of holding this person's hand and I'm just like walking alongside your path and being curious of like, okay, what is your path? What does your path looks like? It's different than my path. There's different vegetation and landscape. What is your
Mm.
landscape right now? And I can't access fully being in your path. Like I will never have access to that fully because I don't have your body, I don't have your life, I don't have your past. But I can try, for me, empathy is this attempt to get as close as I can and activate all my senses to try to capture what is it like? What would it be like to be you? Um,
I'm
so I have
noticing.
another metaphor that I really like that I want to share with you is the metaphor of two guitars. So one guitar is like the strings are playing and the other guitar is not necessarily trying, like let's say it's a sad song, the other guitar is not trying to actively play the song themselves in a way that would never be the same because that guitar is made with that wood and like it has a special way of sounding, but it's the act of letting my string resonate, like slightly internally resonate to the music that you're playing.
Mm.
And having this like, oh, okay, I get a little sense of it. I'm not jumping into it, but I let myself resonate with it. So that's how I like to see and approach empathy. And I know that it's a word that is used so much in so many different ways and defined in so many different ways. So I'm just sharing with you one way that I would say is very aligned with the way NVC approaches it. Um, and one more thing that I want to say about empathy is that in that moment, if we take it in the context of conflict, after I have gotten to that curiosity of what's happening in me and my own experience, and inside activate the curiosity, which is kind of this, a little bit of a switch of like, okay, can I activate that? Then I can put myself in a posture of listening with empathy. And listening with empathy means I'm putting my own path and my own song aside for now.
Mm.
And I'm choosing to just be with yours, knowing that eventually afterwards I'll have a chance to share mine. But I can't do both at the same time. I can't be fully trying to experience your landscape while I'm also trying to push my own inside of it. It doesn't allow for the fullness of your experience to be there. And so for me, that's the biggest and most difficult muscle to practice in nonviolent communication is how do I, even for 1 minute, put myself, my stories, my judgments aside and fully listen to what you have to tell me.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the time we're listening and we're filtering and we're preparing what we're going to say and we're like analyzing why what you're saying is actually wrong because this and this and this is actually what happened, right? We're not listening. We're not in that like, what is your landscape right now, right?
Mhm.
Because it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But if we are even able to do it for half a minute, there is something that shifts in the dynamic.
I love that idea of consciously flipping the switch and being like,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to put my curiosity hat on now. I'm going to put
Yeah,
my empathy hat on now. Like consciously put aside what's going on in myself and listen and feel and
yeah.
understand.
hmm Yeah. I often try to use for myself like this metaphor of there's a shelf and like my experience really matters and I have a lot to say, but I'm just gonna like take my experience and just put it on the shelf for like 2 minutes.
Mm.
And I know it's right there. It's not disappearing. It's not devalued because I'm listening. It's just paused. And once I've listened and tried to get to at least a little bit of that curiosity and what needs you're trying to meet, can I bring myself up in the expression and be like, okay, now that's me,
Hmm.
right?
I'm feeling a real slowing down
Yeah,
in your approach to communication here, um, which is something that I've learned in other modalities as well. Like especially if there's conflict or there's a lot of emotions, like you gotta slow it down to get anywhere. So, you're
yeah,
sharing the process, the 4 magic steps. We haven't even gotten to saying any words yet. It's just like, let's slow it way down.
yeah.
Let me check in with
Mhm,
myself. Let me put on my curiosity hat, my
mhm.
empathy hat, so that I can hear you and understand you more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Part of what happens in conflict is that it goes so fast, right? And it often escalate and is kind of like this ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong until we explode and we separate and this it's hard to slow down. But I believe that is a really important part of the path is if we go too fast, we are missing so many important things that we're trying to express to each other.
Mm,
And often that escalation, I'm often imagining as like a is that it also escalates in the hurt, right? You say something that slightly hurt me. And then I'm like, we have something in us as human beings, like I've been hurt, but like it's there's revenge thing. It is a protection mechanism. I'm going to attack you back and then you're going to attack me back with this. And then we escalate in this hurt, right? And at the end, we can leave like we heard so many painful words in us.
mm,
And that has lasting impact, right? So in particularly my level 2 of the training, one of the things we practice is how do we pause? Because this is the hardest step is I can see this conversation. It's escalating. I can see it escalating, like we all have that radar, like this is an escalating conversation,
Mm,
How do we pause? How do we practice that pause? So that often I need time and space to be able to process what's happening in me. I can't instantly know, you know. It's very hard. I'm still practicing that to be able to know in the moment, and I got better, but there's still a lot of things where I'm like, I'm sorry, I need 5 minutes. Like I can't. I can't
mm,
tell you what I'm feeling and needing. It's still a big bowl of like emotions right now.
yeah. So being able to just like feel that there's too much going on right now, it's like I need to pause here. Like I
Yeah,
hear you, I'm taking it in, I'm processing it, and I'm feeling elevated. Like I need
yeah,
to pause.
yeah,
And I mean, hopefully the other person hears that, because I've been in situations where that has happened and I'm like, I need
yeah,
to pause, but then the other person is just like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah,"
yeah.
and it's hard to come back from that.
It's really
So,
hard. Yeah,
uh, I think nonviolent communication is best done when both sides have the practice, have the training.
yeah,
Just, if one side is violent, nonviolence can only do so much.
yeah. I think I get asked that question often is like, well, what happens if only one person practices it? And definitely it's harder, you know, absolutely. And I think that NVC can still allow me to get clearer about what I feel and about what I need and about what I want. And to be able to put boundaries if I need to put boundaries, to be able to articulate the best that I can, and to be able to find in me a form of peace, you know? And so I find that whether another person is practicing it or not, or like, or interested in it, that it has an impact on the way that I will personally engage with the conflict. And also in the way that I see NVC as a really powerful tool to debrief and process a difficult conversation with somebody.
Now, is
Is
that debrief with yourself you're talking
Yeah,
about?
both debrief with myself, but also a possibility to debrief and come back with the other person. And I find that there's a lot of learning that we often forget about in revisiting a conversation once we're calmer, once we are a little bit more grounded, and being able to express regrets of how we express ourselves, or being able
Mm,
to once the conversation have passed, being able to come back and say, you know what, that's actually what was going on for me when I exploded that day, and take responsibility then.
mm,
Oftentimes is like people want to learn NVC because they want to be able in the moment when they're like the most activated to know how to talk. And I'm like, that's a 20 years process. But if already we start by being able after the fact to acknowledge what happened, name our emotions, and being able to come back to the person, that has a lot of impact in the relationship.
mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
all of that repair part, I think, is also really important.
Okay, so where are we at with the 4 magic
I
steps?
know,
Because
right?
I'm so curious to like understand those fully.
Okay. So those 4 steps actually apply to all 3 areas of the model. So the first step I shared with you is the self-connection, self-compassion. And inside of that, there's already the 4 steps, which is what did I observe about what happened? What did I feel about it? What what was my need that was met or not met? And is there any request that I have? So
Mm,
those first steps are already there just in the connection to myself. Now, when we look at the second branch, so that's the root of the work, is really the self-connection and the self-empathy and the self-understanding. It's where everything starts. I cannot express myself with any kind of clarity if I have no idea what's happening inside of me.
mm,
If it's a mess inside, I can, you know, try to use whatever kind of model is like, I need to get to be able to have that clarity inside before expressing.
Okay, so you're saying that we can use nonviolent communication when there's only us
Yeah,
there. There doesn't even need to be another person. And so we can practice it just with ourselves in our lives.
absolutely. And
That's
I
that's
actually often
awesome.
recommend people when they started learning about nonviolent communication for 6 months or a year not to try to speak differently, just to notice how it's shifting the internal way of relating to myself and of relating to others. And slowly, by that process of shifting the way I'm having more compassion towards myself and more compassion towards others, it will also shift the way I'm expressing myself. Often people come to NVC with like, how should I talk and what are the 4 steps, you know?
Hmm.
But there's a danger to that because if I'm still in the same kind of mindset, I'm just using those 4 steps to get in my way, to manipulate too, you know?
Mm.
So it can become a form of manipulation, and a lot of people have a little bit of that, hesitancy around nonviolent communication because it totally can be used for manipulation if it's not
Mm.
rooted in that, real intention of connection, of caring for everybody's needs. Um,
Okay, well, I love this learning that I should be using NVC with myself, like independent of any other people in the world, and to just like be practice awareness of myself, practice identifying what my needs are, and
mhm.
then even making requests to myself
Yeah.
to fulfill those needs. Like
Yes.
this is earth-shattering for me.
Wow. Yeah. It was my big when I first discovered NVC and I read the book, I was like, okay, that's great. That's the model to communicate. And it's only when I started diving into it that I discovered that whole realm of like, oh, it is actually about how I relate to myself primarily. And there is so much depth and richness in exploring that world
Mm,
and discovery about myself. I discovered so much about myself, about how I function, about what are my triggers and why am I triggered by that, you know?
mm,
And slowly, if I learn to identify what my triggers are and take responsibility for them, it shifts the way I'm in conflict because suddenly something triggers me and I'm not immediately, this is because you, but I'm able to see, like, okay, this is me reacting in that way because this need is not met. And I rewire the pathway that is often like, I have emotions because you, to I have emotions because I have needs. And I can make requests, but ultimately I'm responsible for my own needs.
mm.
Yeah.
Responsible for your own needs. Are
Yeah.
you responsible for your own emotions? This is a question that I have, and like I've experienced in the world. People, it's like I'm so angry because you did that thing.
Yeah.
And so like is that anger mine? Am I responsible for managing that, or is it your fault because you broke my favorite cup?
Right.
I'm so
Yeah.
angry. You broke my favorite cup. It's your fault.
Right. Yeah.
You should take care of the situation.
Yeah. 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 I
What's
really love, yeah. I love that question. And I've been thinking a lot about that because one of the first step when we learn nonviolent communication is the idea that I am not responsible for other people's feelings.
Hmm.
Right. And that in some ways our feelings come from our unmet needs, but also from like, a lot of the things that is connected to our history of like what we ate and how we slept last night, like there's so many elements connected to our feelings. So at first there was something like, wow, this is powerful. I'm not responsible for other people's feelings. And for me, I'm very careful with that too. Because for me, what NVC says is that that is true in certain extent because, for example, I broke your cup, uh, and maybe you have a super strong reaction to that, but somebody else's who would have the same cup and it would be broken, it would not be very important. So the action itself of what I did is not necessarily the absolute cause of your emotion. Another example of that is like, let's say you're 5 minutes late to a meeting we're supposed to have, and maybe I'm feeling upset. But tomorrow you're 5 minutes late and I'm actually feeling like happy because I had something I was just finishing an email.
Hmm.
So the 5 minute late is not an absolute the cause of my feelings. It's much more complex than that. It's my own relationship to what happened. So that is true. And at the same time, what NVC is saying is that the goal, the big intention and the reality is that we are interdependent. We are affecting each other. And that we want to live in a world where we care about each other's needs. So I can hold both things at the same time. I can hold the reality that I'm not absolutely responsible for your feelings right now and the absolute cause of it. And I can at the same time care for your emotional reaction and the fact that your need is not met right now. And I'm in interconnection with you. And so that for me is like, it's really hard to kind of like, it was really hard to wrap my head around it. But if I put those two together, I found somehow this is what helps me in my relationships. I'm not absolutely responsible and I care.
Mm-hmm.
How does that, yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's complicated. I think there's this idea that I'm not responsible for other people's emotions. And there's a real like simple clarity in
Yeah.
that mindset of like your anger, that's yours. I don't got to do anything with that. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's not so simple.
Yeah. It's
And
not
we
so
are,
simple because we are interdependent and we are affecting each other all the time and we have impact on each other.
mm, and
And
this is a good thing. There's also like, I have some friends who are investigating codependency and
mm,
trying to move away from codependency. But
yeah.
what I'm hearing is that in human culture, society, we are interdependent
Yes.
and that we want to take responsibility for ourselves and we want to care for others. And
Mm-hmm.
we like bleed into each other in the emotional field that we create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and Marshall Rosenberg, who created NVC, was talking about that as like he was saying that sometimes there is a necessary like some of us have learned and it's been so ingrained that we are responsible for other people's feelings and we are responsible for other people's happiness.
Mm,
That there is a first important step of like being able to like separate that is already huge. The idea that I might not be, you know?
mm,
And sometimes it takes for some people to stay a little bit for a while in that, like, okay, let's experiment with I'm not responsible.
mm.
And maybe I don't even care, or like I don't like step that much into the care part to be able then to hold both at the same time, you know?
Okay, so either side of the spectrum has problems. It's like, I'm totally responsible for your happiness.
Yeah,
There's problems with that. I'm not at all responsible for what happens to you. There's problems with that.
yeah,
And somewhere in the middle
yeah,
is the sweet
yeah.
spot.
Yeah, it is this like I'm not fully responsible and I know I have impact on you and I care and I want to find solutions that meet both our needs. What can we do?
Hmm. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, Another question about emotions and judgments or thoughts. Like I've I've experienced this, or I've heard this where someone's like, I feel so disappointed in you
Mm,
that the dishes are there in the sink. And they're like, this is my emotion, disappointment.
uh-huh.
Whereas I kind of understand that as more of a judgment or a thought, disappointment. And what's your take on that? And like what to do if somebody uses that in communication?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there are a set of words that are like feelings words that we have a sense are a little bit connected to more thoughts or more judgments and more ideas of maybe some responsibility the other person might have. So sometimes one of the way that I approach it is to try to see can I detach you from my experience and what is actually my experience. Sorry, there's somebody. Can you hear the noise? Can we just
A little
pause?
bit.
I'm going to
Yeah.
take again the. I'm just going to not let him know because he doesn't know. I'm in a call. Okay,
Sure.
this is nothing.
Okay.
Hey, son, I'm on a call right now. It might still be a little noisy. Okay, I'm going to try to answer this again. So, this is a really good question about like what is a feeling and how are certain words are like connecting feelings with thoughts or with evaluation of judgment. Some examples of that are like I feel manipulated, I feel
Mm-hmm.
bullied, I
Mm-hmm.
feel I feel disrespected. That's the one I hear the most. I feel disrespected. And ultimately what happens with those words is that they are mixing my emotion with my idea of your intention in doing that. For example, I feel disrespected. I'm putting an intention in your expression there. And so and what happens with those words is that usually they trigger a reaction pretty quickly in the other person, because the other person's like, no, that's not my intention. I'm not disrespecting you, right? Or I'm not manipulating you. So if we want to be able to express feelings in a way that have more chances to be heard, being able to actually express the feeling itself is helpful. Now, with disappointment, I find that it is an emotion that can live just within me. Like, I can be disappointed that my trip was canceled. And so sometimes that's a guide that helped me to see if that feeling is actually a feeling that is really just rooted in myself. Could I have this feeling without another person? Could I feel manipulated just by myself? That would be kind of hard, right? I need someone else to manipulate me. So that gives me a guide that, like, okay, here I'm like involving the other person's intention or my own judgment of the other person in there. Can I be bullied by myself? Not really. But can I be scared by myself? Yeah, I can be scared. So for example, when I say I feel bullied, oftentimes I feel a mix of anger and fear. And those are the emotions underlying. So that's kind of what helped me kind of guide the, like, getting back to really the feeling is like, how can I really come back to self? Does that make sense? And yet I can say the absolute, like, feeling word, and yet it might have an impact on the other person. I can feel like, wow, I'm feeling really scared right now. And I'm implying that you're doing something wrong, right? Just with my tone of voice and my body language. So ultimately, what I want to name with that is, like, I often say that is like, it's not about the words we use. It's about the intention behind the word we use. It's about the stories behind the word we used. I can use the exact right words, but still having a story that you're mean and you're bad, and you're going to hear it very clearly. Because we have those detectors. We hear judgment, like, very loud. So how do I take responsibility? How do I come back to self and try to name what's really here inside of me?
Yeah. And finding that intention for, if it is the case, intention for repair or connection
Yeah.
or understanding.
Yeah.
And then maybe there is sometimes an intention to, like, blow it up. And, but to understand in ourselves first, like, what is the intention? What is the goal?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
What's
then
my
something
goal?
we haven't talked about yet is making requests. So my understanding is that's the fourth of the 4 magic steps.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions on, like, what makes a good request, or how the request kind of ties together these concepts?
Yeah. Well, the first one is to actually make a request. When I say that is that a lot of the time we're like making non-requests. We're saying, like, I see the kitchen is not very clean right now. Can you
Hint,
hear the
hint,
underlying
nudge,
request that
nudge.
is not named, right? So if we have something we want to ask, let's take our courage and actually ask for something versus just naming statement in the hope the person understands there's an underlying request. Because a lot of the time they won't get it unless we actually explicitly say, here's my request. So making a request when we want to make a request is step 1.
Nice.
The step 2, for me, what is really important is, what is my needs behind my request? Why am I asking that? Why does it matter to me? Because somebody is much more likely to be interested in my request, even if they understand where it's coming from. They understand the how it will make my life better, like how it will actually have an impact. And so being able to identify that for ourselves, like, what is it that, if it's about, like, having the clean kitchen, is like, I really want to cook a really good meal tonight. And there's something about starting with a clear space that brings, excitement for me and motivation to cook. Okay, like, there's a reason. It's not just a nagging, thing I'm supposed to do that I have to do because that's the right thing to do. So giving the reason really helps. And then the third thing is being really specific. If we take the example of like cleaning the kitchen, is like, what is it exactly that would support me? Cleaning the kitchen can be a very broad thing and be interpreted in many different ways for different people. And maybe somebody will have cleaned the entire fridge, but what I want is that surface to be cleared, So trying to be really specific, like, what is it exactly that I would like you to do? And sometimes we say, like, I want you to be nicer. Like, what does that mean? I'm nice. Like, what exactly do I mean by that? What am I hoping for? And the last element I like to say is like, is it actually a request? Which means, am I open to hearing no?
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
If I'm not, that's a demand. And we also live in a world that sometimes we make demand in some ways, but like there's an impact to making demands. And ultimately, I think people get quite resistant and triggered when they feel a demanding energy, when they feel they have no choice. So I want to find a place inside of me where before making my request, I prepare myself for a possibility of no. And what that would mean, and maybe trying to make it a conversation versus like being attached to like, okay, this has to happen that way. But me being like, when I'm asking, for example, for that clean counter, is like, it would really support me that if it was clean maybe by like 5 p.m., how would that be for you? Do you have time to do it now? Could we do it together? But opening myself to possibilities really help too. So
Okay, so I'm hearing guidelines for good requests are, number one, actually make the request, verbalize it, don't just imply it.
Yeah.
The number two was to be specific, or that was number three?
That was number three.
Number
Yeah,
three.
but the number two was name your needs, like name your motivation.
Give the why, give some background as to why it's important.
Yeah.
Number three, be specific.
Yeah.
So
Clear
that they
and
can
specific.
clear and specific.
Yeah.
And number four is to be willing, be understanding if you get a no, to make it a request and not a demand.
Exactly.
And that gets into a whole tricky thing, and what we were talking about before about, interdependence and care and responsibility, and how that aligns with the different parties in the conflict.
Yeah, and in a request is like, it's activating that curiosity too, of like, my needs matter, but your needs as well. And when I'm asking that, I need to take in consideration that you have needs as well, and my requests might or might not meet your needs. So can I open myself to that possibility too?
And then I recently did a deep dive on how to say no with ease and grace, and there's 4 components to that as well. One was to give it consideration, to think about it, not just have an immediate no, but to be like, let me think. And then the second part was the no. And the third part was gratitude. And the fourth part, optionally, was to give a other suggestion. So in the example we're working with here, it'd be like, you asked me to clean all the dirty dishes in the sink. I'm like, let me think about that for a second. I got to say no to that. I'm really in a hurry. I appreciate you making that request to me. And like, would it work for you if I do that tonight before we go to bed?
Yeah. And what I heard you do at that moment too is explaining the why behind your no, because that will really help me. If I just hear no and I don't know why you're saying no, it's much harder to receive.
Yeah.
But if I hear, okay, you're prioritizing something else, and it has nothing to do with me necessarily, it's about like needs you're trying to meet. Yeah, that really helps kind of being able to hear a no for the other person, right? Yeah.
And then the difference between a request and a demand, I really feel that, and I feel like they can hide within each other. Like sometimes there is a request, but it's actually a demand. And if that no comes out, whether it's a graceful no or a, a rude no, it can set off fireworks.
Yeah. That's when we know if it was actually a request or a demand, is when the no
Mm.
comes up, right?
Mhm.
Often it's a good test. And that's why I find like asking myself internally before I ask, okay, how open to a no am I here?
Mm.
Can I prepare myself for the possibility of a no?
And what do you do if you can't? If you're like, this is something that I like absolutely need. Do you say that? Do you
Well, for me, when it comes to that, and I have like a whole like exploration too around like what's the difference between a demand and a boundary. And for me, that goes more towards the realm maybe of boundaries. Like it touches something really, really important and really, really special for me. And I still go from the standpoint that I cannot control other people. Like I can ask you to clean that kitchen, but I can't force you to do it, right? So, but I can when I see that so strongly, I can come back to myself and be like, okay, is there a boundary here? Is there something in me around who I decide to live with that is so important, that touches on something so that I value so much, that cleanness of that kitchen? Am I living with the right person right now? And there's that piece of coming back to like, okay, is there a boundary? Is there like, and what I mean by boundary, for me, a boundary is something I will choose to do myself, not something I'm asking the other person to do. Something I will choose to do to care for my own needs. And that can be, I will choose to move out of here. That is a choice I can make if this is continuing in that way. But again, it's like the boundary is a form of request to myself, or even a demand to myself that like, okay, now that is really important. I need to make sure that I care for those needs of mine, you know. So
So it comes back to our relationship with ourself, which is where you started in this whole conversation. And yeah, we have some ability to control ourselves, control our lives way more than other people.
yeah,
Um, and seems like that's part of the practice is nonviolent communication with ourselves
yeah,
and how we operate within the world.
yeah. And I want to say just a few maybe final words about that, is that for me in this process of learning and diving in nonviolent communication, what I discovered is this growing capacity to welcome myself no matter what happens, to love the different parts of me and the different emotions in me. And that's a superpower I find in life, to be able to come back to this compassion and this and whatever I call them parts, the different types of emotions and their needs that come up inside of us, is like, how do I cultivate the capacity over and over again to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course, you're so sad, Myriam, today. You really needed this or that. Of
Mm.
course you're upset. And and that in itself can support, create so much more inner peace. And that inner peace will shift the way that I'm also relating to others versus being stuck in my own stories and triggers and beliefs and judgments and then projecting that a lot
Mm.
outside.
Yeah.
But selfishly, I find NVC is like really powerful in that relationship, like beautiful relationship to self, compassionate relationship to self.
Nice. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much there. I feel like we could probably talk for 8 hours about all this stuff, but well, we're approaching the end here for today. So I'm curious if people wanted to learn more. What's the path to do that? I know you do. You mentioned you do some trainings. I think you do some corporate trainings. Could you tell us more about what you're doing and how people might learn more?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a company called Reconnect, and we offer workshops for both for individuals and for companies, organizations. Um, my website is www.myriamverzat.com. And for example, we offer retreats that are like a weekend retreat, like full weekends. The next one will be introduction will be in February, and we offer with my co-facilitator Warren Hooley. We offer level 1 and level 2. And so that's for individuals who really want to like learn more and develop, like reflect on their own relationship with themselves, maybe intimate relationships, relationship with their family, but ultimately it helps in all dimensions of our relationships. And then I also offer training for organizations. So I come to an organization for a day to day, sometimes like over span of 6 months, to support them developing more healthy relationships at work. And more than anything for right now for me is supporting people feeling more confident in engaging in tension versus just kind of like withdrawing and like avoiding, which ultimately leads to build up, and often people quit or they explode, you know. And I just finished launching a video course that's called From Conflict Avoidance to Conflict Confidence. And that is a course that people can take in pairs. So you and your coworker could do it together. And so you're learning as a team. And there's a lot of like live exercises because it's all based on communication. So you do it, you know, with each other. So that's also an option for teams that would be more remote or that would be more difficult to organize in-person training. So those are the different possibilities of training with me. And then there's also online, so many trainers, you know, there's 700, I think, trainers around the world now that also offer work online. I'm a certified trainer from the Center for Nonviolent Communication, CNVC. And that website also has a lot of resources to explore and learn more.
Great. Well, we'll put your website link down here in the description for people to check out all those offerings you mentioned. I can just imagine how useful it would be for an organization or a company to get like all their workers or all their executives even like trained up on these communication techniques, and to just be able to flow through conflict way easier and have a more harmonious workplace organization, and you know, for friendships and intimate partnerships as well. I think that's where I have use it most commonly. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I would love for you to do just like an online course where it's just about the self. You know, so
Hmm.
much of what we talked about today was using it with ourselves as the basis of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be practicing that more consciously, just like trying it out with myself, which is something that I've never really practiced before. So
Beautiful.
thank you so much for giving me that piece of wisdom here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me today.